Thank you so much for joining with us for the webinar on enabling circular economy startup ecosystem. So before we get into the webinar, I'll quickly introduce NSRCEL and the circular economy program at NSRCEL. A second. Yes. So NSRCEL is NS Raghavan Cell for Entrepreneurial Learning, and it is the IIM Bangalore Startup Incubator. So over the past 20 years, NSRCEL has been supporting entrepreneurs across stages and sectors. So I will quickly get into the Circular Economy Incubation Program at NSRCEL. So we have partnered with Pernod Ricard India Foundation for this program. And the upcoming cohort is the third cohort we are doing with Pernod Ricard India Foundation. So for this upcoming cohort, we are looking at sectors like climate smart agriculture, plastic circularity, and glass circularity. So when I say climate smart agriculture, we are looking for innovations in regenerative agriculture, precision agriculture, and supply chain traceability. While in plastic circularity, innovations in plastic waste management, plastic waste to energy, plastic free packaging is a few subsectors we are looking at. And in glass circularity, like sustainable bottle redesign, glass cleaning and sorting, and material innovation glass is a few subsectors. So if you're a startup which is registered and has been in operation for 1 year and has a demonstrated POC and is at your early revenue, you should explore and check out more on the program and apply. And as part of the program, you will get clarity in value proposition and your circular business model, and will also get you exposed to alternative funding sources, and will help you in your impact measurement and impact metrics readiness, and all with the access to NSRCEL networks and other government partnerships. So I will quickly introduce you a few of our alumni from the past cohorts. So you would know Good Gum, which is India's first plastic-free chewing gum. So they was also in Shark Tank. So few of you must be knowing them. And we also had Sunbird straws. They make straws out of dried coconut leaves. And we had Apratima Biosolutions, who actually produce enzymes to degrade PET, that is plastic waste. And we also have CGM, who works with farmers in the carbon market space. So if you are in working in any of these sectors, do check about the program, and we'll put the relevant links in the chat box. So do explore. So now over to the panel. So with our past experience in having two cohorts in circular economy incubation program and our interaction with different stakeholders in the sector, we understand that it is we have to bring together all the stakeholders in the sector. So that is the entire point of having this conversation today. So for the webinar on enabling circular economy startup ecosystem, we have Mr. Ankit is yet to join with us. But Ankit is from Mahindra Group. He is Chief
Hi,
Sustainability Officer.
hi Parvati, I'm
Hi,
here.
Yes, hi Ankit. Thank you so much for joining. So he leads the sustainability strategy and partnerships. We have Mr. Shivakumar Karmekar, who is country leader innovation lab project, Decathlon Sports India. His expertise lies in open innovation strategy and cross-functional collaboration. We have Mr. Hari Krishnan, who is director of investments at Greenstone Capital. He leads the investments in clean mobility, energy, circularity, and sustainable agriculture. And we have Ms. Gauri Mirashi, who is co-founder at Carpe EcoSattva. EcoSattva focus on solid waste management, green cover management, and water body restoration. So with the panelists, thank you so much for joining with us today for the webinar. And we have Akshay Joshi, who is Senior Program Manager for Climate COE at NSRCEL, who will be moderator for the panel. So over to you, Akshay, and looking
Thank
forward
you.
to the discussion.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Parvati. Thank you so much. Uh, Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. So, we will have around 45 minutes of discussion, followed by 15 minutes of question and answers. And there are two major aims for me for the next 45 minutes is to demystify what exactly is circular economy for to all of you. And those who are already building in this space, we would like to get insights secrets about what's exactly happening in the ecosystem from across the table with different perspectives. So as Parvati was mentioning, we have Ankit and Shiva who are representing corporates, Gauri who is a startup founder, and Hari who comes from investor VC world. So we have a diverse range of panelists, and I'm eager to learn from them about what's exactly happening in the space. Uh, Let me jump in, and who better to start with the founder first? So let me start with Gauri. Gauri, first tell me what does your startup does, and tell us your journey and how it has been evolved in the circular economy space. Over to you.
Thank you, Akshay, and thank you, Parvati. It's lovely to be here. We've had an experience with NSRCEL and really highly recommend everyone who's considering entering the startup journey to take this opportunity with NSRCEL. So we're about 10 years old now. My co-founder Natasha and I were accidental entrepreneurs. We didn't get into solid waste management and green cover and wetlands from a perspective of setting up a business. We wanted to solve the problem for our city. And that's how we started with just recognizing that for 20 years, we've been seeing the waistline around, we've been seeing our dysfunctional parks and gardens and our stinking lakes and rivers. And why is it that, year after year of World Environment Day and plantations and cleanup drives, we're still in the same situation? And so when we started solving for our own city, we developed processes and methodologies, learned how to operationalize material recovery facilities, were able to standardize and document all of that into what we now call the boat tramp process, which is our primary service offering to urban local bodies and gram panchayats. So it's essentially a process that allows them to transform these three very core environmental and civic sectors within their jurisdiction. So from the start, we've been very focused on working with the government, not setting up a parallel system. We've been focused on smaller cities and towns because we do believe that the urban experience of an Aurangabad, which is where we're based, is very different from a Mumbai or a Bangalore or a Pune. And we've also been very focused on kind of doing a hybrid model of research consultancy with execution. And I feel like those are the three pillars with which we started that we continue to uphold today. And in terms of how the sector has evolved, I think when we started, the real difference I noticed is that we were always cautioned against working with the government. We were told that, you're choosing to work with the government, good luck, let's see if you survive a year. And now I feel like the government is viewed as a much more enabling partner in specific sectors, definitely, but also overall. So I think that's one thing that's definitely changed. And I think all ecosystem actors are changing. So even if you look at corporate houses, whether it's sustainability or CSR, I remember when we started, it used to be like an add-on function for HR or admin or finance to look into sustainability and CSR and EPR. But now you have teams dedicated to these sectors. So with each ecosystem player evolving, the sector also, of course, has overall evolved. I think there's a lot more nuance now in the sector. You can position yourself, very specifically in one, just e-waste or just organic waste. But you can find partnerships that will unlock doors for you across the board. So I think that's been very heartening to watch over the past decade.
Uh, Got it. And very exciting and interesting journey. I had studied this model way back when I was working on solid waste management. So glad we are interacting. As you mentioned, now companies have dedicated sustainability as a wing. Would love to bring Ankit because he's Chief Sustainability Officer at Mahindra Group. Ankit, would love to know more about what is your role and why and how companies like Mahindra Group are focusing on the circular economy. If you can elaborate on that.
Absolutely, Akshay. Thank you. Thank you, firstly, for having me here. The topic of circularity is definitely important. As a group, I think we have been working on this subject for about 7 years now. There used to be a body called the FICCI's Circular Economy Committee, which was supported very much by Niti Aayog and Mr. Kant himself. And Mahindra played an instrumental role in helping set that up, which in turn led to a lot of ELV, not ELV actually, EPR related regulations. You might have seen many of them come over the years for batteries, tires, waste, etc. Many of which are playing a crucial role in, let's say, enabling circularity. But if I were to talk more from the company's perspective, we have a broader strategy on sustainability called the Planet Positive strategy, which is to basically look at how do we help each of the group businesses and the industries that we operate in to become planet positive. Within that, there are two parts of circularity that we focus on. The first part is what I call material circularity. The second part is business model circularity. So on the material circularity front, three or four simple aspects. The first is that how do you use less material? uh, you know just use less material to achieve the same objective. The second is how can you use low emission material. The third is that how can you design for recyclability, or use material which is easy to recycle or design for recycling. The fourth is how do you increase the content of recycled material. So those are the four sub principles within that. Now how this plays out is very different in the auto sector, for instance, versus what it plays out in, let's say, real estate, construction, etc. So sector by sector, there are different ways in which this will play out, but that's one focus area. The second focus area is, as I said, looking at business models which are circular in nature. So a lot of circularity at scale will happen only if it makes financial sense. So either it's a regulatory requirement for you to do something, or there's a financially viable business model. So there, an example that I'll stress upon is the end of life vehicle recycling. So Mahindra has a company called Cero, which has been around for about 7-8 years again, which plays a role in end of life vehicle recycling. The regulations to support that have only come this year, but we have been operating in that sector. It's still a small business, but with a lot of potential, where any old car is sort of taken back, it's stripped down of the hazardous components, and then all the non-hazardous components are separated by types. So steel or metal in general is very easy to recycle, but some of the other components not that easy. But the idea is to again work with all the value chain partners, authorized recyclers, etc., to address that. Similarly, another big area of circular business model is with respect to battery recycling. Again, a relatively nascent stage right now, because battery, especially for EVs, is still to catch up in terms of volume. But we are already, doing a few partnerships with innovative companies on how do we make that happen. And there also, as I said, it's not just about recycling to begin with. In the battery recycling story, it starts with how do you extend or solve for a longer life. Then the next step is that how do you ensure that there's maybe a second life application. So instead of mobility application, can you do a storage application? And then finally you ensure that recycling with higher recoverability. A third example that I'll give in terms of business model is in the tractor ecosystem. So in India, again, tractor penetration in the farming community is still very low. It's in the single digits, is what I understand. And a lot of that is driven by inability to afford. So we are again playing a role in terms of retrofitting old tractors, working with our dealer community, and doing very structured program to allow many of these second hand tractors to come into the market. Similarly, there's a company called First Choice in the group which does this for vehicles, etc. So the concept of circularity is, as I said, not just about recycling only, but a lot of sub elements in terms of extension of life, in terms of designing for it, in terms of how do you make the commercial model around work. So that's broadly how we think about this subject, and what we are doing there. Let me take a pause there.
Thank you, Ankit. I would like to double click on business model and especially how regulation and financial viability, how you're helping startups to figure that out. But before coming to that, let me first bring Shiva from Decathlon. Shiva, you have a very interesting title, Country Leader for the Innovation Lab Project. Can you please elaborate on what exactly is your role and what is your day-to-day looks like and how it is related to the circular economy?
Uh, First of all, I would like to thank NSRCEL to having me here to share my thoughts. It's an interesting question what you asked. Why now? Because sometimes I work with business team. Sometimes I work with the sustainability team. There is no department for me because innovation is a core value of Decathlon. We innovate in our product. We innovate in our way of working. Everywhere innovation has to be there. We have that culture from the beginning. So the innovation lab is a what do you call reactivating the sleeper cells inside each and every one of our employees. Where we somewhere we know we were focusing on the numbers. Sometimes we forget to lose where what is the world looking for. That's a business no problem. We usually pick it. uh, for example, sustainability was one of the problem earlier. Okay, we have to bring it as a mandate. Sometime it is a mandate. Into 10 years back, sustainability is not even in nobody's what do you call in mission. 10 years back, we brought this as a mission for India, and we converted this as a global mission for Decathlon. Sustainability is now, as Gauri told, yes, it's not mandate, it is everybody's responsibility. So my role is to find out the problem in each and every vertical and give them solution to accelerate their business, their vertical no, efficiency, and increase customer satisfaction. That's the three key pillar we work. And every day finding new solution, finding the one guy will be happy to face problem is me inside the company. So and the people are ready to give the problem statements. This is the day and day out of my role. I hope I have given the answer to you, Akshay, what you asked for.
Yes, Sugar. Thank you. Uh, One major thing for me is that how corporates are now extensively looking for solutions in the circularity space. And when there is a traction, the money trail follows. So let me bring an investor perspective to this. The people with money. Hari, please help us understand what is Greenstone Capital's thesis and what are interesting trends that you are observing in the circular economy space.
Great. Thank you so much, Akshay and NSRCL for having me out as part of this panel. Glad to be with people who are actually creating an impact on the ground. Like I said, I mean, like you pointed out, there is a money trail which follows it, but the money trail is always one level divorced from the actual implementation on the ground. So what Gauri, Ankit, and Siva are doing on the ground is actual climate change, whereas I'll be maybe making investment memos on what they're doing, right? So with that set apart. Quickly on what we do, Greenstone Capital, we are an environment-focused growth capital fund, very specifically focused on environment and related segments, including circular economy, clean energy, clean mobility, and sustainable agriculture. So circular economy indeed is something that is of significant focus for us. And I personally have been, looking at the space, as part of Greenstone, and prior to that, for about 2 to 3 years right now. A couple of interesting trends that you can see, which has evolved, and obviously a part of our job is to, obviously track these trends, and not only track these trends, and also track how the space, and within the space, and the space is, I mean, when you're talking about the space, there are multiple subsegments within it, right? And some parts of it are actually been touched upon by Ankit, and Siva when they were speaking about this, right? One part of our job is to actually chart out how these segments are evolving, not just from the number of startups or the number of solutions on the ground, but also their adaptability, the economic viability, retention of functional properties, etc. When these recycled or reused products, etc. are being used, and how they are being accepted by the markets. So two, three things that we have noticed. One is obviously the ecosystem as a whole is evolving, right? But the ecosystem as a whole is not evolving uniformly. one broad perspective that you can look at is about 10 or 15 years back, everything used to go into the landfill, right? Then after that, people slowly started streamlining supply chains where they could take the waste out, sort it, collect it, sort it, etc., and then feed it back to a recycler, which in most cases used to be outside the country, with select few names within the country. And in the last 10 years, what has now happened is the collected waste gets recycled within the country in itself, right? And then it's being fed back into the ecosystem. Again, this process that I spoke about will be different for plastics, will be different for batteries, will be different for textiles, will be different for metals. All of them are at different stages of evolution. But the good part is there is a rapid movement towards this evolution, and what is also supporting is the second trend that we have noticed, which is obviously tailwinds, right? From corporates as well as the government. So obviously you have large corporates like Mahindra and Decathlon supporting startup founders, businesses in the space, giving them incentives to all sorts of incentives, whether it's financial or whether it is strategic, and many other incentives in order to continue on this path and create a solid climate outcome. At the same time, there are government policies across the chain. I mean, you can see, I mean, obviously plastic is just one part of the overall, positive policy change, right? You can see it across, and, there are multiple reasons for all of this. So, the tailwinds are fairly strong when you look at, how the ecosystem has been evolving. The third thing, which interestingly is one of the most important pillars of this space for us as a fund, is the quality of the founders and the team who are coming in, right? So you have really smart people coming in. So obviously, smart founders like Gauri who are coming in and trying to create an actual intervention on the ground. In many cases, we are actually seeing that the founders themselves may not have a circularity background, or may not be, let's say, even may not even have a background with respect to the materials that they're working on. So you would find, let's say, a battery recycling startup where the founder is maybe starting to work on batteries as a subject for the first time. And that's very glad to see, because that also shows that a lot of people are sitting up and taking cognizance of the fact that this is an actual problem to be solved. And then obviously, last but not the least, the money aspect. Money aspect from two cents. One is obviously there is capital across the table. Unlike maybe 10 or 12 years back, there are funds across the stages. Like, for example, we come in at a Series A or a Series B stage. So obviously we look at slightly evolved models. There are, network funds, or sorry, there are, friends in other funds, etc., who look at earlier stages or later stages. So there is capital across the board. Obviously, that aspect is also evolving as more and more money comes into the space. And then in parallel, founders are also starting to realize that, while they build their business, they need to focus on economics. So which means that, the green premiums as a concept may exist now, but it may not exist maybe 10 years down the line. So let's make our product viable. Let's make our product viable for the customer, comparable, to virgin materials for the customer. And let's also ensure that the products function as they claim to be. So, so these are some trends that we are seeing. And then what we do is obviously we overlay these trends on the startups that we see. And then, obviously, interesting opportunity, if I find anything interesting, then that becomes an investment case for us. So this is how we, look at circularity as a space. I'll take a pause over here.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you, Ari. I think for each one of corporates, be it the founder or be it a VC, everyone is bullish on circular economy as a space. This is what I'm getting at. So those who have joined, especially if you're a startup founder or want to explore, uh, we have an excellent panel. You can drop your question and answers. I was just waiting each one of them to introduce so that you get an idea and formalize your question accordingly. So drop your questions into the chat box. We will last 10 to 15 minutes. We will take one question, questions that you have dropped. If possible, mention the name of the panelist to whom you want to ask the question. We can then direct it towards them. So yes. Now let's. I would love Ankit throw some light on. You mentioned certain interesting trends that are emerging. How you are partnering with startups? Can you give one example that you found an interesting idea the startup is working upon and you supported them? It would be, I think, great for our startup founders to then also understand how they should approach corporates.
Absolutely, Akshay. So, see, there are two ways in which we generally partner with startups. As a large corporation, generally the first area is procurement. So we often are looking for people who have the right kind of products that we can just buy for our different operations. So it could be something as simple as tissue paper. So we have been doing a lot of procurement from Beko. It's a company that's making tissue paper with a lower environmental footprint, from a very small pilot quantity to about 25 to 30 tons of material is what we are buying from them. So that's one simple example. Another example is in the cement industry for our real estate construction. We are trying to see how can we reduce the footprint of cement or concrete that goes into the building. So there we have been working to include more of steel slag, done a lot of pilot work to check out its characteristics, strength, etc. And now scaling it up in a very big way. So many of these things are supported by different innovative companies, startups, etc. So sector by sector, if I go, that's the biggest area. But for procurement, for anything that we can procure, generally what is required is that talking only about the environmental footprint alone is not sufficient. It has to be commercially viable, at least at par pricing, or relatively not at a very significant premium. So I think commercial viability is also important. Environmental benefits obviously are important. The third part, often which is also challenging, is safety, or rather I would say reliance. Because there is a certain quantity that is required, there is a certain deliverable timelines, etc., that is required. So the procurement teams need comfort on a lot of other parameters also, after, let's say, pricing works out and after the product characteristics work out. So I think that's often an area which becomes challenging. So people often think that I'm giving the best price, and this makes a lot of sense, but even then things may not work out. So I think the holistic package is what is required. Internally, we are definitely allowing, or rather pushing our teams, including our procurement teams, etc., to do more and more pilots, at least encourage wherever possible. So that's the first area. The second area that I would say is where it's a stage beyond plain procurement, which is a little bit of partnership and working together. And that happens in a area where you need more long-term engagement. So battery recycling is an example where we in-house neither do we manufacture batteries right now, we in the sense that we import cells and combine them to batteries, but we are not really deep into the recycling ecosystem for batteries. So there again, we are working with a couple of large startups, who will be our partners for helping recycle these batteries. So these are more long-term partnerships, etc. In a lot of areas related to material that goes into a car, that's the other area where there's a lot of interest in the concept of material circularity, especially for the auto ecosystem. How can we work with different materials, both which are visible on the outer end of the car, so leather and seat covers and whatever someone was telling me today, using old textile, the mats, etc., made from discarded textile. So there's a lot of interest and engagement happening in that ecosystem, where you're pretty much working together to co-develop a product according to requirement specifications, etc., or for that matter, engaging in more longer term partnerships. So that's typically the two ways in which we engage. We are not a VC firm right now. We don't do short term investments, etc. There's no venture arm focused on this space right now, but the first two is how one can approach and how one can work with us.
Got it. So ideally, if someone wants to approach a large corporate, based on what you have shared, they must have established the product, as well as it should have the financial viability. But Shiva, I
Preferably,
would like
yes.
to, yes, Shiva, I would like to ask you, you are looking at the innovation. And as an incubator, we are dealing with startups who are at the idea stage, who are in their early stages. uh, how they should approach corporate, or they should just wait for a certain time, establish their POC, and then start approaching. That's the first. And second, they might not have scale initially. How they should figure it out?
Okay. For me, the works in other way. Okay. I work with the early stage startup. Okay. When they have the germination, it's not even incubation. When they have a germination, we help them. Okay. If you have this idea, and I will go back to my board, that means with my discovery team, and say, there is a possibility here. What do you think? Then we will get a feedback from the core working network group. We tell this is a problem, this can solve, this might solve if we tweak it little bit, pivot. All this direction we get, and we pass this information to the startup. Okay, this is our problem. Your solution or your idea might solve this one. Do you want to try by changing its course little bit? Few startups accept and work along with us. That's kind of open strategy, open innovation strategy. That is actually a good strategy for any early startup company to work with, because when you have a problem backed solution, high possibility for the POC getting successful, and what do we call partnership rate, success rate is better on an open strategy. If you have an MEP, ready MEP with you, then it becomes a disruptive strategy. Either it has to improve the efficiency of the current system by reducing the price or reducing the time or reducing something else, some KPI, so that this corporate can accelerate their pace towards the goal. That should be the pivot we need to have for the early stage startups to work. But I openly, it's nothing wrong in trying something new or something which is coming out, right? It's always good to, my advice to the startup is to pivot, ready to pivot, because 53rd idea, someone can win on at 78-year-old. Yes, possible. Anytime can be done.
Okay, got it. Seems it's interesting. So, I think those who are listening, if you are in that MVP stage, you know whom to connect with to explore the possible synergies. Uh, Hari, over to you. What do you think should startup keep in mind when they're approaching investors, especially those who are in their pre-seed journey, early journey?
Got it. Um, so see, in this space, I'll obviously the context being this space, right? Whenever someone is looking at talking to investors within this space, obviously there are 3 or 4 things that obviously investors want uh, identified from the startup founder, right? And this is basically this is based on the hindsight that we as in later stage investors have, because we have the benefit of having seen some of the struggles that later stage founders would have had as they scale up, right? So 2, 3 things. One, and some of this goes back to what I had mentioned at the beginning, right? One is obviously the kind of team that you have been able to, string together. Obviously, at that stage, when you're looking at a pre-seed stage, you may or may not have the ability to string together a large team. But do you have the relevant team with you? Maybe it may be as small as a 1-member team to a 3-member team or a 4-member team, in order to at least get that MVP rolling, which Shiva was speaking about, right? And when I'm talking about pre-seed, I'm talking about not just idea stage startups, but also startups which have started working on their MVPs in some form or the other. I mean, nomenclature varies: seed, pre-seed, etc. Right? So do you have the team in place? And the team is essential simply because of the fact that, again, like Siva mentioned, if you need to fail fast and then move on to the next idea, the team should have the capability to do that. And, let's be very clear, this space is not the easiest of spaces to work in. It might have become easier after, in the last 10 years, but it's certainly maybe not as easy as some of the other spaces that you can see a lot of money pouring in. So investors really have to believe that this team can go the whole hog in building out, they have the products and the solutions that they are planning to. The second thing, which is important in this space, is control over the waste supply. And, for me, this is one of the most important parameters that I look at when we're looking at any startup, whether it's an early stage or a mid stage. See, everything at the end of the day depends upon how economical or economically viable your business model is. Not just from, and it's economically viable only if it is economically viable for the end customer. So if someone is approaching, let's say Ankit or Siva, with a certain product which can be used within their respective groups, I would presume, as in the case of other corporates, that like I said earlier, functionally it should perform the same as what a non-recycled product should behave like, and at the same time, economically, it should make sense for them to adopt this product. That works only if you have a control over your waste supply. Now, compare and contrast. Let's take plastic, for example, right? Virgin plastic manufacturing is an industry that has been around for hundreds of years, 100 years at least. A lot of billions of dollars have actually flown into this. And obviously, the logistics of supply is so well streamlined over there that, people are able to get what they want in terms of plastic granules, etc., at a certain price. Now, compare and contrast this to the plastic waste value chain. Logistics alone can kill a startup, right? Because you need to have access to multiple sources of waste, and on top of that, you need to figure out how to get that waste to a certain, a location where you can then recycle it. You need not have solved for all of these problems if you're a pre-seed company, but at least you should have the ability to show the investor that you have identified this as a problem, and yet you should have a practical solution to solve this. Not, like I said, not necessary that the practical solution in itself is something that you have demonstrated, but you should have an idea of how you'll go about it, and if at all there are problems, etc., that you foresee in implementing this solution, you should also have some idea around how to solve this. So that is the second thing that we look at, because in the absence of that, then you are at the mercy of the market when it comes to access to waste. And the third thing, and again, this is something that I would stress on, is the ability to create a traceable system. And when I'm saying traceability, it is not just from the purpose of showcasing to a customer that I have traceability. Traceability is important from from a survival perspective. If you do not have traceability, then the space also has a lot of pilferage possibility within at various steps in the value chain. Unless you create, or at least have an idea, showcase an idea to create a traceable system, right? You do not simply have any control over your value chain. Now, whether it is at the collection of the waste, or whether it's at the recycling point, or whether it's at sales point, you need to have a digital system or some semblance of a digital system which can allow you complete traceability of your value chain. Now, these are the things that we generally see as problems which later stage companies are unable, find themselves in. If a pre-seed or a seed level company is able to recognize these problems, at least acknowledge them, and have thoughts around how they will solve for it at a later stage, might not be a completely meshed out solution. It could be 50% there, 30% there, but a mere acknowledgement will be enough to at least tell the investor that these guys have at least their things sorted out.
Got it. Interesting. Uh, I think we have got a perspective from the corporates and investors slash VC. Gauri, over to you. How you have navigated, uh, first in your journey, I would like to understand, as a startup founder, you are juggling up with a lot of things. Um, and how to then approach, how you have approached investors, how you have approached corporates, how you have approached government. I think cracking government and working with, it's a big mammoth task, and you are able to crack it. So would love to know what's the journey has, and what are the key insights that you would like to share with our startup founders?
So I think part of it is what we've been able to do well, and part of it is what I feel we should have done better in retrospect. So I think with most of the stakeholders, I think consistency is critical. Showing up, being there, being willing to, I think, like Siva mentioned, right, being willing to pivot, not like big pivots in terms of change of product or direction, but also the smaller pivots, acknowledging when a challenge has come up, being willing to adapt. So I think that's been critical to working with most of the stakeholders. I think also a certain level of transparency from the start, so that conversations don't get complicated at later stages. That's also been something that's worked really well. I think in retrospect, I would say that I think the first 2-3 years are very, for us, have been very field intensive, like figuring things out on the ground, and how systems will work, how this is, how our process will work. So I think we could have done better on three fronts, which I think a lot of people getting into starting up now could keep an eye out for. I think one is having really strong HR and accounts and finance teams, because I think that for us, it was so focused on working on the field that we missed out a little bit of that. Second, I think having in your top leadership and in maybe some kind of a mentoring role, people who will ask the hard questions. Because I think in the first few years, when things are, when you're breaking into a problem that people thought could not be broken, there's a lot of support and encouragement and praise coming from all directions, whether it's partners or the media or whatever. But I think from that stage on, having someone on board who's going to keep you on track, and who's going to ask the hard questions. And I think also from an relatively earlier stage, having an eye out for the second line of leadership. Um, I think often it feels to founder, like to me, it felt in the first 5-6 years like, it would be best if I did everything. Um, and and while that might work out for that one project or that one decision, I think planning earlier on for that second line of leadership would have assisted with navigating a lot of other things in the future. So I don't know if I've answered your question exactly,
You
but
have,
yeah.
you have holistically covered. I think the point that you share, I keep interacting with startup founders, and these are the points we keep telling. And you said you will need people who will ask hard questions and keep you on track. So again, if you are building in the circularity space, please apply to the program. We will be that people who will keep you on the track. But Gauri, follow up to you. Are you from the circularity background? And if you're saying no, then how the
I
journey
mean,
was? Because Hari was
I'm from
mentioning
the
how.
urban policy background. So my bachelor's is in environmental studies and politics, and my master's is in urban policy and governance. So I come from a sustainability background, not exactly the kind of work we do. But I think also with that background, what we've learned in our classrooms and what we find on the ground, there's a fair amount of gap. So I think while the education can give frameworks to think with, and exposure, that's very valuable. I think the learning that happens on the ground in the first 1 or 2 years is like phenomenal, absolutely
Got it.
enjoyable, and very rewarding.
Got it. Got it. Thanks. Thanks for sharing this. Shiva and Ankit, one uh, whoever goes first. What can you share examples where you have co-created a solution with startup, the pivot part that you were mentioning, or what can you elaborate on what are the solutions that you're seeking for your larger problem or few problem statements, if you can mention that? Anyone can go first. Shiva, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. See, before starting this innovation lab, okay, I think around 7-8 years back, companies came up with an idea. Can we create waste product out of the waste? Okay, I will give you raw material. That means we don't create product directly. We create alternative component which is sustainable in long term use. There's a company called, I don't want to name the company, but the company name was changed now. It's called Polygenda, who came with an idea. Okay, I will change plastic bottles on any other plastics, recycled plastic, whatever we get it, we will change it into yarns. From there, we made no textiles out of it. That textile became a component. It's 7 years back. Same way, that is co-created. That was created along with our decathlon growth also. That was also there, and we made it as eminent to everyone to use this as a use case. One of the startup kind of when we started, we worked in 2018 when innovation lab was not started. I was the one who was working with co-creating the solution with a startup named Zenetics. Was an energy management solution where they were doing something else, little pivot and little more demanding. We were demanding, to be frank. We to make the startup grow, we need to ask the hard questions, rightly said, Gauri. But we need to, at the same time, we need to demand what we want so that their actual capacity can come out. When we ask, either there will two things can happen. Either the startup will run away or they will put their effort to make it happen. When it happens, we give the space for them to grow. in a massive scale. We tested the solution in one store, and it's exactly the predicted value it saved. And then we scaled up across all the stores, the energy management solution. Now every store is energy efficient, which is saving around 5 to 12% in a year. Energy savings is happening. After seeing the small savings and a miniature version of a BMS solution, this solution got a catch up the eye of Snyder, and the Snyder acquired. It's all everyone knows about this one. That means a startup has grown and it's been exited by, and also they got that place what they want to do. We were just an instrument, but the startup has to put the effort. This is one story. There are many stories to tell. When startup connects with me, I will be able to tell this story as
Got it.
you told
Right.
earlier.
Ankit? Ankit, you're on mute.
Yes, sorry about that. So to answer your question on what kind of problem statements that are there where we could, use help, I think I'll go more industry by industry. So in the auto sector, if I were to talk about it, then we are generally looking for all components within the auto value chain where circularity can be embedded. So uh, polymers, steel is the biggest element, but steel I think is not a startup play necessarily. But tires is the second biggest element from an environmental footprint. We are doing a lot of work. In fact, next week we are doing a major conference in bringing all the tire OEMs and some innovators, etc., to see how we can reduce the footprint, both in terms of manufacturing as well as in terms of recycling. Recycling is an area where there is a lot of opportunity for startups to play a role. Generally speaking, it's an evolving ecosystem right now. The next thing is what I would call broadly in the polymer bucket, where again multiple types of plastic and plastic related components that go into a car, especially in the exterior of the car, in the dashboard, etc., where we are also looking for low emission material that can be included. There's a bunch of work that we have already started doing, especially in terms of seat covers, leathers, floor mats, etc., but more opportunity exists there. If I were to jump to a different industry, then the real estate industry, both from a perspective of our real estate business, Mahindra Life Spaces, and also from our Mahindra Holidays business, where we construct a lot of resorts. In fact, also from Mahindra Logistics, where we do a lot of warehouse construction. There, across these three businesses, we are trying to see how can we incorporate low emission material in construction, generally speaking. So cement and steel are again the bigger elements, but there's a lot of other components in terms of wooden boards, etc., whatever we can do. The next one that I would pick is that in the farm ecosystem as well, very similar to auto, there is a bunch of things that we are trying to do to enable circularity, as I said, in the business model side of things, which is old tractors. How do you enable a market for that? The last piece which I'll pick is our Sero business, which is inherently a end of life vehicle recycling company. There, the part in the value chain that we play is sort of doing all the paperwork, buying the old cars, making the financing work, and sort of stripping the car into its components. But then we rely on other people who work with us to recycle the specific components. So these are some top of mind that come to me. But as I said, across sectors, there's an opportunity. So always open to innovation and new solutions.
I think you have covered a wide areas in which people can solve for. Hari, is there any white space that you would like to add apart from tires, polymers, alternative low emission building construction materials, and for farms? Apart from this, any white spaces do you think?
So when we look at white spaces to invest in, right, there are two, three things, and obviously, just coming back to what I said earlier, which is basically the fact that we are slightly later stage investors, right? You know, we look at it from a fundamental, what are the fundamental drivers driving that space? So, like I said, not all segments within circularity are at the same stage. All of them are at various stages of evolution. Some will be easy to commercialize. Some will be driven by certain tailwinds or certain drivers. For us, some of the white spaces that we're looking at, and which obviously overlaps with some of the stuff that all three of my esteemed panelists spoke about, are in no order. For us, one white space would be, let's say, alternatives to fossil fuels, let's say, for example. So the whole system that feeds into biofuels, for example, compressed biogas, or let's say biodiesel, or wet waste recycling, etc. All of that would be that's a space that we are actively looking at. Obviously, there is a broader ecosystem around that also. Like, for example, if I'm looking at the biofuel space in itself, it is not just the ability to create a supply chain which eventually feeds into that, but also the technology that is used in order to convert this raw material into a biofuel. The use of, let's say, enzymes, etc., that go into these systems in order to create that end output, etc., etc. So that's one white space that is interesting for us. The second one would be where there is a strategic need overall, from not only the nation's perspective, but also across various industries. Stuff like battery recycling would fall into that, right? Although, as someone mentioned on this panel, it's at a nascent stage. We're seeing significant progress in that space, having spent some time with a lot of innovators in the space. Water, one of the spaces that Gauri works in, again, is an interesting white space, right? And there is a lot of work that can be done around that. And in my mind, it is one of the most critical, white spaces that more and more entrepreneurs should get into. Maybe people are not seeing the importance of that space right now, but thankfully, with all the talk around water in the last few weeks, there will be more and more push in that space. And then, of course, the third white space, which is of interest to us, is something which goes into reducing the overall level of pollutions or emissions in the, within the country. Now, obviously, plastics is one space which comes within that. So all the PCR regulations, etc., while they're pushing things in the right direction, we see that overall space, accelerating in terms of, increased usage of recycled plastic, etc., over the next few years. We are increasingly seeing a lot of traction around the reuse of, let's say, materials collected from, let's say, emission control, etc., and feeding it back into the system. One more white space, which obviously overlaps with some of the stuff that I mentioned about, is the use of biomaterials, sustainable packaging, etc., etc. Right? There, obviously, while there is a need, while a lot of people are working in that space, and there are a lot of interesting models that are coming in, we see varying degrees of economic viability over there. Like, some startups or some innovators have managed to reach a stage where they've been able to commercialize with larger marquee customers, etc. There are some which are still on the on that path. But one horizontal theme that is cross-cutting across all of these spaces that I spoke about is the increasing number of people who are creating products and solutions within India for these for these white spaces, and that is important. Like, what was maybe not seen, let's say, 10 years back. 10 years back, it would have been more of a service-led business, etc. Now we are increasingly seeing product and solution-led businesses, and that is important for us. Like, for example, we are capex agnostic. We're okay with capex, we are okay with asset-light models, etc. But we like products and solutions. Each of these pieces that I spoke
Someone
about.
asked that question. Someone has asked that question, but okay, go ahead.
If you see, my portfolio is actually, right now, capex heavy. But yeah, so that is important for us, actually.
Got,
The ability to build products and solutions around this.
got. I lost track of time. So we are just 5 minutes. A lot of people have asked questions. So let me take few questions and we will do it in the like rapid fire, quick, quick, quick. So one is Gauri. First one, I will go with Gauri. They have asked how you have survived and how to overcome the challenges, especially in the initial years. I think founders' pain, I can understand,
Yeah.
totally related to it.
I mean, for me, what's been critical is to have a partner. I don't think I could have done this alone. And I think we've had our, when one's on I'm going to do this, the others are let's give up. So it's been a nice match. So definitely that, having a good team, like I think Hari's also mentioned, team is critical beyond the founders. And I think, so one of the major things we went through was a fire at one of our
I think Gauri is facing some issue.
She's just got into an interesting part of a story.
Yes, she was mentioning about fire and she got
Now?
stuck. Okay. Yes, now you're on. Yes, you're
Yeah, no,
online
I
now.
was just saying when we had a fire at our material recovery facility, what was wonderful to see was so I was expecting a lot of like, oh, now how are you gonna overcome this? But I was met with a lot of, here's what we can help you to overcome
Oh,
this. So I think that was really finding the right partners that are, you know, mission aligned. I think that was really helpful.
got it. Got it. Uh, Ankit, question is addressed to you. What parameters do you look at for the right kind of products, impact metrics that are important for you?
So, as I said, for the right kind of products, there is commercial viability and business case. There is environmental parameters. Now, depending on the product type, obviously emission intensity, material use, sourcing, water intensity, etc. The third aspect, as I said, is also reliability of supply. So, broadly speaking, these would be the top three. There's obviously more factors that go into any evaluation, but these would be the top three.
Okay, got it. In interest of time, I have skimmed through the questions, and there are a few addressed to Siva as well, but I think he has addressed in while sharing his anecdotes. If you still have any questions, you can drop us in the present. I would request Parvati to drop our email. You can drop us an email. We will connect you to the relevant person on the email if you have specific questions and want to take it forward. She has already shared the email ID. So you can ask questions if you're not able to take now because of the interest of time. But it was a great and interesting discussion. I enjoyed it a lot. A few takeaways from this entire discussion for me is the circular economy as a sector. All the panelists have showcased how they are bullish about these sectors. Few things the founders or someone who is jumping into it that needs to keep in mind is be patient, be persistent, keep the financial viability angle into your mind, be ready to pivot, have ready to do pivots and control over the supply chain, as well as what Gauri mentioned is have be transparent. I think Hari and Gauri also tried to bring the founders as the co-founders that you have. It's like another marriage that you're going into. So make sure your initial team and founders are supportive, solid, and especially in your initial 2 to 3 years, it will be a challenge. Um, these are the ways having a good line of founders and a leadership will help you to navigate it while approaching corporates as well as VCs. Try to ensure that your fundamentals are clear when you're approaching them, and ensure that it's not just one time that you're approaching, you're doing constant follow-ups so that you're top of their mind. I think these are the key takeaways for me. Let me know if I'm missing anything. And glad that we have connected. I would request each one of you to get connected with each other to take the conversations forward as well. We are happy to facilitate that. If and for the startups who have joined today for the discussion, please drop us an email if you have any queries or if you want to know more about the program. We are here to help you. Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. It was great discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Akshay. Thank you, Parvati.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.
Bye.
Thank
Okay,
you.
take care. All the best.
Bye.
Bye.